The late afternoon sun painted long shadows across the dirt paths of Miller's equestrian center. The scent of hay, sweat, and saddle leather filled the air. Familiar, grounding. 17-year-old Ella Wheeler pushed her wheelchair across the gravel toward the paddock, the rubber wheels crunching softly beneath her. To most, the image of a girl in a wheelchair approaching a wild stallion was unsettling. To Ella, it was inevitable. Thunder, the newest arrival to the center, had been here for 3 weeks. A towering, black stallion, 17 hands high, muscles rippling beneath a coat the color of midnight. He was breathtaking and broken, just like she once was. "Ella, honey, you shouldn't be out here alone," called Martha from the feed room, brushing dust off her jeans. "Thunder's been difficult today." "I'm fine," Ella replied, not taking her eyes off the stallion as he paced the paddock. Her voice was even, sure, grounded by years of navigating a world that doubted her. Thunder's reputation had already spread across Pine Valley. 3 seasoned trainers had tried and failed to tame him, one left with a fractured arm, another with a concussion. The town council had begun whispering about having him euthanized. Too dangerous, they said. Too far gone. But when Ella looked into Thunder's eyes, she didn't see danger. She saw fear. That kind of fear wasn't foreign to her. It was the same look she wore after the accident 10 years ago, the one that took her parents and left her legs lifeless. It was the silent scream of someone trapped in a body they no longer understood. Thunder stopped pacing. He turned toward her. Their eyes locked, across 15 feet of worn fencing, wood warped by time and tension. His ears, usually flattened, in aggression, flicked forward. Curious, Ella smiled faintly. "That's right," she whispered. "I see you, Ella Marie Wheeler." The bark came sharp, cutting through the moment like a whip crack. Richard Davidson, owner of the center and Ella's guardian, was striding across the yard, gray hair tousled, concern etched into every step. He reached her quickly, his face a tight mix of worry and authority. "What did I say about staying near that fence, especially when he's like this?" "I wasn't close," she said softly, not looking away from Thunder. "I was just watching." Richard followed her gaze. Thunder had resumed pacing, but he glanced toward them, alert. "You see something in him?" Richard said, his tone shifting. "I do," he sighed. "You always see the good. But that horse isn't just spirited, he's dangerous." Ella looked at Richard, her voice quiet but steady. "So was I. Once." For a beat, neither spoke. The wind rustled the dry leaves. A distant horse neighed, and Thunder watched. "You're not training him," Richard repeated. "Not now, not ever." Ella's knuckles whitened on her chair's armrest. "Please, just a chance. That's all I'm asking." Richard shook his head. "I promised your parents I'd keep you safe." "And you have," she said, her voice cracking just slightly. "But safe doesn't mean never taking chances. You taught me that." They were standing outside the barn now, Thunder's paddock within view. The stallion had resumed pacing, but every so often he tossed a glance their way. "I remember," Richard murmured. "You were 10. You cried the first time I put you on a horse after the accident, but you didn't fall." Ella smiled faintly. "Because you believed I wouldn't." The silence stretched. "The showcase is in 2 weeks," she added. "Let me work with him until then. If it doesn't go anywhere, if he's still too dangerous, I'll back off. You have my word. 2 weeks isn't nearly enough for proper training." "I'm not going to train him," she said. "I'm going to befriend him." Richard ran a hand through his hair, groaning. "You really believe you can reach him?" She looked toward Thunder, who had now stopped and was openly staring at them, his ears forward, his body still. "I know I can," she whispered, "because someone once reached me when I thought I was unreachable." Richard swallowed hard. He had pulled Ella back from the brink once through therapy, patience, and horses. Maybe this was her turn to pay it forward. Finally, he nodded. 2 weeks. But you don't go near that paddock without me or Joe around. And the first sign? Trouble. We stop. Deal. Ella's smile broke across her face like sunlight. Deal. What she didn't know then, what none of them knew, was that those next 2 weeks would change everything. For her, for Thunder, for the world watching. From the sidelines, dawn broke over Pine Valley in hues of rose and gold, painting the clouds like brushstrokes on silk. Ella was already at the stables, bundled in a hoodie, eyes bright despite the early hour. Thunder paced in his paddock, ears twitching, hooves disturbing the stillness. Ella wheeled herself into her usual spot near the fence, close enough to see him, but not close enough to be threatening. She opened the book in her lap, Black Beauty, and she began to read. Her voice was soft, melodic, and steady, just loud enough to be heard over the morning birds. From the stable door, Joe stood with crossed arms. That your plan? Ella didn't pause. Voice and presence let him get used to me. He's not a baby goat, Joe muttered. Horse don't care about bedtime stories. Maybe not, Ella replied, but he'll understand the intention behind it. For 3 days, she repeated the ritual. Arrive before sunrise, sit, read, leave. By the second morning, Thunder's pacing had slowed. By the third, his ears began to flick toward her. Joe noticed, but said nothing. On the fourth day, as Ella read a particularly tender passage, she heard the sound of hooves behind her words. She looked up. Thunder was standing at the fence closer than he'd ever been, nostrils flaring, watching, her heart pounded. Hello, beautiful, she said softly. He took 1 step closer. From across the yard, Richard's voice rang out. Don't move. I won't, she called back, eyes never leaving Thunder's. She resumed reading, her voice trembling only slightly. Thunder stayed. He listened. The wall between them, brick by brick, was crumbling. The storm rolled in fast. By mid-morning, the sky above Pine Valley had darkened to a deep slate gray. Thunder, real thunder, grumbled in the distance. The air turned sharp, charged with electricity. Thunder. The horse paced his paddock relentlessly, his nostrils flaring, muscles taut. His ears were pinned back again. Every gust of wind sent him flinching. You sure you want to do this today? Richard asked as he pulled a poncho over Ella's shoulders. Ella didn't hesitate. He needs to know I'll be here. Even when it's storming. She positioned herself at her usual spot near the fence. Rain began to spit from the sky, slowly turning into a steady pour. Her book, now slightly damp, lay open in her lap. She began to read, but Thunder was frantic. He tossed his head, hooves kicking up mud as he galloped along the fence line. The sound of a crack of lightning made him rear, letting out a wild, terrified whinny. Okay, that's it, Joe shouted, stepping forward. We're getting her. Out of here. Wait, Ella called out sharply. Everyone froze. She closed the book gently, her eyes never leaving Thunder. Look at him, she said. He's not angry. He's scared. And she was right. The powerful stallion was trembling, his flanks quivering, eyes white-rimmed and searching. Every instinct told him to bolt, but his gaze kept flicking toward her. Without thinking, Ella began to sing. It was an old lullaby, one her mother used to sing on stormy nights. Her voice was clear and strong, even as rain poured down her face. Thunder stilled, his ears swiveled toward her. He took a step forward. Martha gasped. He's listening. Another step, then another, and then, in the kind of moment people spend lifetimes waiting for, Thunder reached his massive head over the fence and gently touched Ella's outstretched hand. The world stopped. Richard whispered, Nobody move. Ella kept singing, her fingers soft and still as Thunder explored her palm with his velvet nose. His breath synced with hers. They were no longer girl and horse. They were two broken spirits finding something sacred in the storm. Sarah Mills. Camera clicked from under the barn awning. That photo, the soaking girl in a wheelchair touching a wild stallion, would go on to travel the world. But in that moment, none of them knew that. All they knew was, everything had just changed. Thunder didn't run after that. He stayed at the fence watching her even when she wasn't speaking. He would wait for her every morning, ears pricked toward the lane before her wheelchair even appeared. Ella began bringing apples. She never hand-fed him, only placed them gently on the post. He took them slowly, deliberately, eyes never leaving hers. On the 6th day, she rolled closer to the paddock gate. "He's ready," she told Richard. "I'm not sure I am." He muttered, but opened it slowly. Thunder didn't flinch as Ella entered the enclosure. He watched her movements with quiet interest. She stopped a few feet away. "Hi, handsome," she said. "Thank you for trusting me." And then unbelievably, Thunder walked toward her. He lowered his head and gently placed it in her lap. Ella froze, overcome. Her fingers slid up his wet neck. "Good boy," she whispered. "We're going to do something amazing together." That evening, Ella showed Richard her plans, a custom saddle, harness system, a way for her to ride, without reins or stirrups, but with security. "We have 5 days to get him used to it," she said. "You've thought of everything," Richard whispered. "You really want to ride him?" "I have to, for me, for him." They began immediately. Thunder sniffed the saddle warily at first, but Ella guided him through every new step. Her hands were steady, her voice constant. The biggest challenge was teaching Thunder to stand next to a modified ramp. It would be the only way Ella could mount him safely. "People don't understand horses," she told Martha. "They're not scared of things. They're scared of what things might do to them, just like people." By day 4, Thunder stood calmly beside the ramp. He let Ella touch him. "Run her hands over the saddle. It's time," she whispered. Everyone held their breath. Richard and Joe stood nearby, ready to intervene. Ella wheeled to the top of the ramp, now eye level with Thunder's back. "Okay, handsome, let's try something new." She transferred her weight slowly. Thunder tensed, but didn't move. "Easy," she soothed. Then, miraculously, he shifted his stance. He was helping her balance. "Would you look at that?" Joe whispered. They were made for each other. Ella sat tall. Thunder stood proud. The connection was complete. Now came the hardest part, teaching him to respond to her voice, her body cues, her intentions. But Thunder was a natural. By the 5th day, they were walking, then trotting. Thunder responded to every command like they'd trained for years. The night before the showcase, the barn was quiet. Sarah Mills, who had been granted full access, snapped a photo of Ella hugging Thunder's neck. His ear was cocked back toward her voice. "What are you telling him?" she asked. "I'm telling him that tomorrow we show the world what it means to believe in each other." That night, Ella's Uncle Tom arrived from California. "I couldn't miss this," he said, hugging her tight. The house filled with laughter, warmth, and quiet pride. They didn't sleep much. The next morning dawned bright and clear. The parking lot overflowed. News vans, reporters, local and national. Ella brushed Thunder's coat one last time. "You're already the most handsome horse here," she whispered. He nuzzled her shoulder. Richard arrived, dressed in his best. "You sure?" Ella nodded. "We both are." She transferred onto Thunder with grace. They entered the arena to silence. Their routine was simple. Walk, turn, trot. But every motion was fluid, intentional, connected. Then came the moment. Ella unfastened her safety harness. "Trust goes both ways," she called. The crowd held its breath. She gave the signal. Thunder reared, high, proud, controlled. Ella didn't flinch. She moved with him. Perfect balance, perfect trust. The arena erupted. As they completed a final slow canter around the ring, tears ran freely. When they stopped, Thunder bowed his head to Ella, and the crowd gave them a standing ovation. The photo of Ella and Thunder went viral. News stories flooded in. Messages from across the world. Then came the visit. Dr. Sarah Bennett from the National Therapeutic Riding Center. "What you've built here, it's revolutionary," she said. Together, they launched a program, one that would help others like Ella and Thunder children, veterans, trauma survivors, people who needed healing beyond medicine. Thunder adapted to each new rider, gentle, patient, empowering. One boy, Marcus, had lost his legs. By the end of his first session, he was laughing. "He trusts me, Mom," he cried. Thunder's magic wasn't just in his power, it was in his ability to listen, to believe, to teach. And Ella? She was no longer the girl who once believed she was. Broken. She had become the bridge between fear and hope, and their story had only just begun. The sun dipped low over Pine Valley, setting the clouds ablaze in gold and rose. Long shadows stretched across the arena as Ella wheeled herself to the familiar mounting ramp. Thunder followed at her side. No halter, no lead, just trust. "One more ride?" she asked softly. Thunder snorted in response, positioning himself exactly where he needed to be. Richard was already waiting, hands in his pockets, heart in his throat. He helped her mount. No words needed. They rode beneath the first stars. The world was quiet, just hoofbeats on soft earth and the rhythm of shared breath. Every motion spoke of 1,000 unspoken promises. Behind them, the Therapeutic Riding Center glowed softly. Inside, families gathered, some waiting for their chance, others just watching, hoping. Ella turned Thunder toward the hills. The breeze lifted her hair. She wasn't a symbol. She wasn't a miracle. She was a girl who refused to give up, and the horse who taught her to trust again walked proudly beneath her. As they disappeared into the trees, Richard stood silently at the fence. "They're not just changing lives," he murmured. "They're rewriting what's possible." Sarah Mills captured one last photo, a silhouette of girl and stallion against the fading sky. The caption read, "Where miracles begin."